The junk moon of Varos 3 was silent. Not the peaceful kind of silence, but the hollow one that settles over graveyards and forgotten war zones. Skies glowed red with permanent cloud burn-off from orbital strikes. Shards of broken satellites still floated in slow orbit above, casting flickering shadows across the surface. There were no cities left, no voices. Only fields of scrap stretching to the horizon, littered with the bones of dead machines. Rhett trudged through the metallic dunes, his boots crunching over brittle panels and crumpled alloys. His jacket, gray, patched, sun-bleached, clung to his frame, and a cracked helmet shielded his face from the abrasive wind. Dust caked every edge of his gear, and he reeked of oil and ozone. 6 months he'd been here, salvaging alone. 6 months since he last heard another human voice in person. He preferred it that way. He paused on a ridge made of collapsed drone hulls and pulled out a scanner. The small device blinked erratically, struggling to lock onto anything worth taking. Most tech here had been fried beyond repair, either by plasma bombs or scavengers who picked it over before him. Still, sometimes he got lucky, a power core, a memory cube, a piece of old Imperial armor. Today, however, it blinked red and yellow, confused. "Come on," Rhett muttered, tapping it. The screen flickered. The device let out a strange beep. Then another. Not the usual frequency. He frowned. That was organic. A pulse signature. Not a machine. Not exactly. Lowering the scanner, Rhett turned slowly. The wind picked up, blowing sheets of dust across the wreckage. He stepped carefully toward the signal, his sidearm sliding from its holster without him thinking. The last time he'd investigated a strange ping, it had been a scavenger drone with half its mind burnt out. It tore through his old cart before he blasted it to pieces. He descended into a pit formed by 3 collapsed cruisers, their frames half submerged in dust. The signal pulsed stronger. A low, groaning sound reached his ears, not mechanical. Not wind. Something was breathing. He stepped over twisted girders, past shredded insulation cables. Beneath a pile of bent alloy panels, something glinted. Rhett crouched and shoved the debris aside. Sparks flicked from a tangle of exposed wiring. And beneath it, slumped against a support beam, was a creature. It was massive. Fur, black as night, matted with blood and oil. Patches of metal were fused into its flesh, enhanced limbs, spinal implants, sensory ports embedded behind its ears. One eye glowed dimly yellow, flickering in and out of sync. The other was swollen shut. A snarl rumbled from its throat. It tried to rise, failed. Rhett raised his pistol. But the beast didn't attack. It just watched him. "Easy," Rhett said softly. He lowered the weapon a few inches. "I'm not here to hurt you." The creature blinked slowly. He knew what it was. Everyone did. A Predator-class weapon from the Galactic War. Called Lupins by most. Varnation hybrids by those who studied them. A merging of alien biology with military-grade tech, bred and enhanced to kill without hesitation. But this one looked like it had been through hell and back. Its front leg was twisted at an unnatural angle. Wires dangled from its side, sparking with every labored breath. Metal plating on its shoulder was dented and fused together like someone tried to weld it shut mid-battle. And still, it hadn't lunged. It hadn't even growled beyond the warning snarl. Rhett looked around. No other signals. No traps. Just him and the dying creature. "They left you here," he whispered. The Lupin blinked again. Slowly, Rhett holstered his weapon and took off his gloves. The air stung against his skin. He moved toward a pile of salvage and began fashioning a makeshift stretcher. A repulsor plate from an old lift droid. Struts from a shuttle wing. Ropes cut from an old parachute rig. It took 20 minutes, but he returned and gently slid the creature onto the platform. The beast groaned. When the sled bumped over debris, it gave short growls, but didn't snap. Its eye followed Rhett the whole way. Back at his workshop, an old, half-buried dome near the edge of a ravine, Rhett opened the rusted gate and pulled the stretcher inside. His repair table was barely big enough, but he managed to hoist the creature onto it. Lights flickered on. The dome smelled of solvent, grease, and recycled air. "All right, big guy," Rhett muttered. "Let's see what we're working with." He began scanning the creature's systems. The implants were advanced. Beyond imperial. Some of them had biosuppressors and control chips fused to the spine. Others looked like they were meant to boost aggression through chemical injections. But they were damaged. More interestingly, some had been intentionally sabotaged. Like someone had tried to remove or disable them. Rhett frowned. "Someone did this to you." This wasn't battlefield damage. It was surgical. The beast didn't move. Rhett disinfected the wounds, removed broken chips, and patched the leg using a support brace. He replaced a damaged energy conduit with one from his cart's backup battery. Sparks flew. The creature grunted. Hours passed. Rhett didn't stop. He didn't even think about it. His hands worked from instinct. His mind ran through every old manual he'd ever read on hybrid tech. But more than that, he simply wanted to help. When he finally stepped back, the dome was dark. Only the soft hum of power cells and the faint breathing of the creature filled the space. Rhett slumped into a chair and rubbed his eyes. Then he poured a bowl of thick stew from the kettle. He hesitated, then placed one on the floor near the beast. The creature sniffed it, but didn't eat. Rhett took a bite from his own bowl and looked across the room. "I should name you," he said, half laughing. The creature blinked. "Kale," Rhett murmured. "Yeah. That sounds right." The comm unit on his desk buzzed. Rhett stood and checked it. A red alert blinked on screen. Unauthorized lifeform detected. Tracking beacon active. His heart skipped. What? He turned to Kale. Grabbed the scanner. Ran it across the beast's neck. A small chip blinked under a fold of fur, just below the ear. "Oh no," Rhett breathed. He grabbed a scalpel and tweezers. The creature growled weakly as he worked, but didn't resist. The chip came free. Rhett crushed it under a hammer. Too late. He looked at Kale. "They know you're alive. And they're coming." Outside, the wind howled louder. Inside, the dome felt colder. Rhett sat down next to Kale. The creature's breathing steadied. Its eye locked onto his, and for the first time, Rhett didn't see a beast. He saw a soul. A soul that had been turned into a weapon. A soul that had been thrown away. And a soul that deserved to be saved. Morning came in streaks of dull orange through the cracked skylight of Rhett's workshop. Outside, the wind had slowed to a whisper, carrying with it the sound of shifting debris across the junk moon's rusting plains. Inside, the hum of power cells provided the only steady rhythm to the day. Kale lay still on the repair table. His breathing was steadier now, less ragged. The glow in his mechanical eye had stabilized, and the internal alerts Rhett's scanner had flagged the night before had mostly cleared. But the creature was still weak, his muscles spasmed intermittently, and one leg remained immobile, its cybernetics fused too deeply with old, damaged tissue. Rhett hadn't slept. He sat nearby with a cup of black synth brew cooling in his hands, watching. Not for signs of danger, but for something else. Something he hadn't expected to find on a moon filled with dead machines: connection. He rose, stretching with a groan, and walked over to the table. "Hey, Kale," he said, keeping his voice low. "Still with me?" The creature's eye flickered toward him. "Not a threat. Just watching." Rhett nodded. "Good. Let's figure out who you were." He slid a data cable from the table's console into one of Kale's exposed ports, careful not to disturb the damaged wiring. His tablet beeped as the system linked. A string of corrupted files flashed across the screen, most unreadable: data loss, corruption, encryption blocks. But one section remained intact. A log labeled, Project, Guardian Fawn. Guardian? Rhett whispered. He tapped the log. The workshop dimmed as a flickering projection rose from the tabletop. A younger version of Kale stood in full armor, still massive but uninjured. He stood beside a woman with glowing amber skin, draped in silken robes with a crest of House Arishia over her shoulder. Children laughed and played behind her. Kale was not growling, not snarling. He was still. Calm. Watching over them like a sentinel. Then the file glitched. Another scene replaced it. Explosions. Screams. Kale, bloodied, fighting back soldiers in the same armor he once wore. A voice rang out. Shut him down. He's too loyal. Then the recording ended. Rhett stood frozen. He turned to Kale. You weren't built just to kill, you were built to protect. And when they told you to break that code, you refused. Kale's eye closed slowly, like he remembered. Rhett swallowed hard and disconnected the cable. He crossed the room and pulled open a locked drawer, removing a pack of emergency ration bars and another power cell. He placed the food near Kale's muzzle and worked on swapping the depleted battery in Kale's chest rig with the new one. The cell clicked into place with a sharp whine, and a faint light pulsed along Kale's side. Kale jerked. His body tensed. Then he stilled again. Rhett stepped back, watching closely. Kale slowly pushed himself up on one elbow. Easy. Rhett said, hands raised. You don't need to. Kale didn't rise further. Instead, he lowered his head slowly, not from weakness, but in recognition. Rhett blinked. You understand me. The creature gave a soft grunt. A long silence passed. Then, with one of his metal claws, Kale pointed to Rhett's chest. Then to his own. Rhett understood. Yeah, he whispered. You and me. Later that evening, Rhett sat at his cluttered desk, pulling apart damaged components from an old satellite he'd hauled in last week. But his mind kept drifting. Every so often, he glanced over at Kale, who now rested near the dome's central console. The creature had moved there on his own, dragging himself slowly across the floor. The night was quiet until Rhett's terminal blinked. A new signal. Not from Kale's systems, external. A bounty alert. He opened it. Bounty ID, APX-1193 target, unauthorized predator class hybrid status, active reward, 10,000 credits alive/5,000 dead last ping, Varos 3. Rhett read the text twice. His stomach dropped. He looked at Kale. They want you gone. Not just hidden. Not just silenced. Kale looked up. The meaning passed between them. Rhett stood and began pacing. This bounty, it's not random. They didn't just put a price on your head because you're dangerous. They put it there because you're proof of what they did. You disobeyed. He ran a hand through his hair. They turned a protector into a monster, and now they want to erase the evidence. Kale growled low, not in anger. In memory. Rhett turned back to his terminal and dug deeper into the remaining fragments of Kale's logs. Another corrupted video file surfaced. He decrypted it slowly. The feed was glitchy, broken. But a face appeared. The same woman from before. She stood before Kale in a burning palace hall. Protect the children, Kale. Please. Even if it costs everything. A final command. Then static. Rhett shut the screen off and sat back. He looked at Kale, eyes stinging. You did what they wouldn't. What they were too afraid to do. You chose to save lives, not end them. Kale blinked once. The comm unit buzzed again. Rhett jumped to his feet. This time, the alert wasn't about the bounty. It was a proximity scan. Unidentified ship entering low orbit. Stealth mode engaged. Rhett stared. He turned to Kale, then to the scanner. They found you. Outside, the wind picked up again. The shadows stretched across the junk fields like reaching fingers. Kale rose slowly. His limbs shook. Sparks flickered along his side. But he didn't fall. Rhett walked to the weapon rack and grabbed his old plasma rifle. He handed Kale a reinforced shoulder guard. I don't know what you are anymore, Rhett said. But I know what I see when I look at you. Kale tilted his head. Rhett smiled. A protector. The dome's lights dimmed. Somewhere above, landing struts touched down. And in that moment, the silence of the junk moon was broken by something ancient and powerful. The return of a guardian. The sound came first, a deep, vibrating hum that rippled through the earth like a slow heartbeat. Then the ship appeared through the thick, red-hued dust clouds, matte black, wedge-shaped, with hull plating etched in old war sigils long since banned by intergalactic treaty. No lights blinked on its exterior. It descended silently until its landing struts hissed into the sand. Rhett crouched behind the dome's outer barricade, his plasma rifle clutched tight. Beside him, Kale crouched low, his injured leg braced with a makeshift exosupport Rhett had jury-rigged from an old loader frame. The creature's body was taut, ears forward, mechanical eye narrowed. A low growl rumbled from Kale's throat. Rhett tapped his wrist pad and activated the motion scanner. One lifeform stepped out of the ship. Humanoid. No drones. No backup. Not yet. He came alone, Rhett whispered. Kale growled again, louder this time. The hatch of the ship opened with a sharp hiss, and a figure descended the ramp. A man. Tall, armored in dull gray-blue combat gear that glinted at the joints. His helmet was off, revealing a scarred, hawk-like face topped with silver-gray hair cropped tight to his skull. His eyes were sharp and cold, glinting like ice. He stopped at the base of the ramp and spread his arms casually. Kale, the man called out, his voice carrying through an external amplifier. My loyal dog. You were supposed to die quietly, like the others. But look at you, still breathing. I suppose that's one part of your programming that never broke. Rhett frowned. Who the hell is that? Kale did not answer. His eye remained locked on the man. The man stepped forward, hands still raised in mock surrender. It took me some time to track you down. But I always finish my missions. He stopped just short of the dome's outer perimeter. Come out, Kale. I won't kill you quickly if you make me chase you. Rhett glanced sideways. You know him, don't you? Kale took a step forward. The man lowered his hands. That's right. Come on. One last lesson, old friend. Kale let out a snarl, deeper than before, and stepped into view. The man smiled. There you are. He pointed at Rhett, still hidden behind the barricade. And the mechanic. What a charming pet you've adopted. Tell me, human, do you think you understand what you're sheltering? Rhett stood slowly. I know enough to stand beside him. The man's smile faded. Then you're a fool. He drew a small device from his belt and tapped it. The sky answered. From behind the clouds, 3 autonomous hunter drones descended, their thrusters howling. Each bristled with weaponry, their red sensor eyes glowing like blood under a full moon. Rhett cursed and dove for cover as plasma blasts rained down, striking the sand around them. Kale roared. He lunged forward, his clawed limbs propelling him through the fire like a missile. The first drone turned, but too slowly. Kale slammed into it, his claws ripping through metal and wire. The drone exploded in a ball of flame. Rhett popped up from cover and fired at the second drone. His shot hit home, cracking one of its wings, sending it spiraling into the sand. The third swooped low, aiming directly at Kale. Rhett shouted, "Kale, behind you." Too late. The drone fired. A bolt of plasma hit Kale square in the side. He staggered, yelped in pain, then fell to one knee. Rhett fired again, striking the drone's sensor. It burst in midair and collapsed in a heap. Smoke drifted over the wreckage. Silence returned, broken only by the crackle of burning drone parts. The man stepped forward, slow, unfazed. "You've gotten sloppy, Kale. That never would have touched you during the war." Kale struggled to stand. Blood, or whatever equivalent still flowed in him, leaked from his side. The man drew a long, curved blade from a scabbard on his back. "You were never supposed to think for yourself. And when you did, we had to put you down. I was the one who gave that order, Kale. You should thank me for making you what you are." Kale finally spoke. His voice was a rasp, distorted by mechanical filters, but it carried weight and fire. "You trained me, to protect." The man paused. Kale rose to his full height. "I still do." Then he charged. The man met him head-on. Blade against claw. Flesh against steel. The sound of the clash echoed across the junk moon like thunder. Rhett moved to flank, searching the downed drones for anything useful. One of them had a half-functional autocannon. He ripped it loose, jury-rigged a power line, and turned it toward the fight. Kale and the man circled each other. The blade hissed through the air. Kale dodged one strike, then another, before swiping the man across the chest. Sparks flew. The man grimaced but didn't slow. Rhett aimed. A flicker on the man's belt caught his eye. A blinking transmitter. His stomach dropped. It was broadcasting. "Oh no," Rhett whispered. He opened his scanner. Dozens of signals. Ships in orbit. More incoming. This wasn't a cleanup mission. It was a beacon. They hadn't come just to kill Kale. They'd come to make sure no one knew what he was. Rhett opened a channel and sent a blind pulse message across all salvage frequencies. "To anyone listening, this is Rhett of Varos 3. They're coming for the truth. For Kale. He's not a monster. He's not what they told us. He saved lives. He saved mine. If you hear this, help us." He didn't know if anyone would respond. Maybe no one was left who cared. But he had to try. Kale let out another roar and tackled the man. They crashed into the sand. The blade skittered away. The man reached for a sidearm. Kale struck his wrist, breaking it. The weapon fell. Kale raised his claw. The man sneered. "Go on, then. Do it. Prove you're still the weapon we made." Kale didn't strike. He turned. And walked away. Rhett stared, breathless. The man coughed, pushing himself up with his good hand. "Mercy, Kale," he spat. Still clinging to that fantasy. Kale didn't answer. Instead, he looked to the sky. And for the first time since the war, something answered back. The clouds shimmered. A massive shape decloaked in orbit. A Varnatian dreadnought. Ancient. Majestic. Lost for decades. And now, it had returned. A voice echoed from above. "Kale, son of House Arishia. We heard your howl. We answer it now." The man stared up, pale. Rhett helped Kale back into the dome as the dreadnought descended like a star reborn. Kale whispered, barely audible. "They remember." And Rhett knew then, the fight was far from over. But the truth had survived. The sky split with a sound like morning thunder as the Varnatian dreadnought descended from the clouds. Its hull, ancient and battle-scarred, was emblazoned with the symbol of House Arishia, a stylized flame cradled by a lupin claw. Blue energy rippled along its underside as it hovered over the junk moon, casting long shadows over the wreckage-strewn plains. Inside the dome, Rhett paced nervously while Kale rested against the wall, breath shallow, side leaking coolant. The fight had drained what little strength he had left, but the glow in his mechanical eye burned brighter than it had since Rhett first found him. The comm system crackled to life. "We come in peace. Kale of House Arishia, prepare for retrieval. Your signal reached the stars. Your kind is not forgotten." Rhett looked to Kale, who lifted his head slowly. "They heard you," Rhett said. Kale grunted softly, then began rising to his feet, groaning with the effort. Rhett moved to help, but Kale waved him off. Pride pushed him upright. His claws scraped the metal floor, and the heat in his mechanical limbs flared as he walked to the dome entrance. The dreadnought lowered a platform from its underside, a beam of soft blue light guiding its path. When it touched the ground, two figures descended, tall, regal, their features wolf-like but more refined, less weaponized. One was clad in silver robes that shimmered with embedded light. The other wore a ceremonial exosuit that combined armor with flowing fabric. The one in robes stepped forward, voice calm and resonant. "I am Sava Thran, last keeper of Varnation memory." She bowed slightly to Kale. "You carry the soul of Arishia." Kale bowed his head in return, then pointed to Rhett. Sava turned her gaze to the human. "You sheltered him when others would have run or sold him for scrap. You are known to us now, Rhett of Earth." Rhett blinked. "I just fixed what was broken." "More than that," Sava said. "You remembered his purpose. Come. There is much you must both see." With Kale supported between them, the trio boarded the platform. Rhett followed in stunned silence. The platform rose swiftly, the landscape shrinking below. The dome, the wreckage, the battle scars, left behind as they entered the vessel that shimmered like living stone and humming light. Inside, the dreadnought was more cathedral than warship. High ceilings glowed with floating lights that moved like stars. Symbols etched into the walls pulsed with faint color as they walked, reacting to Kale's presence. Rhett stared in awe. "This place, it's alive," he whispered. "In a way," Sava replied. "It responds to legacy. And Kale is the last of one." She led them to a high chamber lined with floating memory crystals, each glowing softly in orbit. She tapped one, and a projection bloomed to life. It showed Kale, younger and unscarred, walking through a city of light. Children of many species followed him, laughing. At the center of it all stood a woman with fiery eyes, the same one from Kale's corrupted logs. "Queen Alaris of House Arishia," Sava said. "She commissioned the Guardian Fong project. Not as a weapon, but a safeguard." The projection shifted. Soldiers entered the city. The queen shouted, a blade in her hand. Then the orders came. "Activate failsafe. Remove compromised elements." Kale stood before the queen, claws shaking. Then, instead of attacking her children, he shielded them. No. He was struck down. Chains thrown over him. The projection ended. "He was branded defective," Sava said. "Because he chose love over obedience." Rhett swallowed hard. "And they buried the truth. Until you unearthed it." Kale growled softly, his voice low. "Queen Alaris died?" Sava nodded. "She fell protecting her people. But her message survived. And it led us back to you." She gestured to a panel, where new data scrolled rapidly. "But there is danger still. The enemy has copied your genetic code. They are building new predators. Twisted, obedient, soulless." Rhett's eyes widened. "Clones. Born without a heart," Sava said. Unless we stop them, the galaxy will know only fear. Kale sat in silence, then rose to his feet. We end it. Preparations began at once. Rhett was given access to the ship's forge deck, where alien tools shaped armor and weapons not seen in decades. Kale received a new exoframe, sleek, strong, inlaid with the crest of Arishia. A command signal pulsed from his armor, not to control, but to link him to every system aboard the dreadnought. In the briefing room, a three-dimensional map displayed a dark void near the collapsed star of Nerix. There, Sava said. The cloning facility. Shielded, hidden behind the ruins of an old moon. We will approach in stealth. But you and Kale must enter it alone. Why alone? Rhett asked. Because only he can call to what remains inside. Kale nodded. Some of them, Sava said, might still be reachable. If there is even a spark of his spirit in them, he can awaken it. Rhett looked at Kale. And if there isn't? Kale's voice was steel. Then I end them. The stealth vessel dropped from the dreadnought's hangar in total silence. Wrapped in a veil of optical shadows and echovoid generators, it passed unseen through the wreckage clouds around Nerix's broken moon. Inside, Rhett double-checked the override virus he and Sava had coded, a failsafe to destroy the genetic databanks in case the clones couldn't be stopped by reason. Kale stood at the viewport, watching the stars. Rhett walked up beside him. You scared? Kale turned. No. But I grieve. For them. Kale nodded. They never had a choice. Rhett placed a hand on his shoulder. Then let's give them one. The base was cold metal and darker intentions. Hallways pulsed with sterile light. Automated defenses had long since been disabled by the stealth ship's disruptors. But the real threat was inside. In the central chamber, hundreds of biotubes lined the walls. Within each floated a clone. Some fully formed. Others incomplete. Their bodies resembled Kale's, but twisted. More metal than flesh. More control than compassion. One of them opened its eyes. Kale stepped forward. The clone snarled. Then paused. Kale removed his helm. I was like you, he said. But I chose more. You can too. Another clone stirred. Then another. One of them stepped out of its tube. Rhett watched, heart pounding. The clone raised its claws. Then turned. And struck the control console. Sparks flew. The other clones reeled. Some shrieked. Some attacked each other. Chaos erupted. Rhett activated the virus. It spread in seconds. Tubes shattered. Files collapsed. The clone army, broken before it could rise. Kale fought through the fray, not to kill, but to shield the few who hesitated. In the end, only a handful stood with him. Frightened. Shaking. But free. Rhett joined them, bruised but alive. Is it over? He asked. Kale looked back. No. It's just begun. They returned to the dreadnought with the survivors in tow. The ship's corridors dimmed in reverent silence as Kale led the 5 former clones, his mirror images, yet unmistakably different now, through the lighted halls. The memory crystals overhead shimmered gently, as if whispering blessings to those who had chosen their own path. Rhett walked behind them, his body aching from the mission, but his spirit lighter. He had seen it. The moment when the fire in Kale's heart had sparked in another. When one clone chose not to be a weapon. Not because someone commanded it, but because something inside him said no. Back in the sanctuary chamber, Sava Thran stood waiting. Her silver robes cascaded like waves around her as she observed the newcomers. 5 answered the call, she said. Kale nodded solemnly. 5 is enough. She gestured to the chamber's altar, where a glowing orb pulsed. Place your claw upon the heartstone, guardian. Let the sanctuary record this day. Kale stepped forward. He placed his claw upon the orb, and the ship vibrated softly. An image formed above the altar, Kale standing at the cloning facility, protecting the newborn free ones. It was not a scene of war. It was one of hope. Sava turned to the former clones. You are not bound to House Arishia. You are free to choose your path. But if you wish it, you may stay. We will teach you to protect, not to destroy. Each of the 5 nodded. One of them, younger, smaller, and still limping, stepped forward. He looked up at Kale, then at Rhett. He saved me. You both did. Rhett crouched slightly. What's your name? The young one hesitated, then said, I don't have one. Kale grunted softly. Then choose. The clone looked at Rhett. Then said, Rix. Rhett smiled. Rix it is. The days that followed were filled with rebuilding. The dreadnought remained in orbit above the junk moon, now renamed by the Varnatians as breathless, meaning rebirth. Rhett returned to the dome and helped retrofit it into a training sanctuary, while Kale oversaw the education of the new generation. The clones, no, the students, learned quickly. Not just how to fight, but how to think, how to protect. How to feel. Kale didn't say much during those days, but Rhett could see it, the way his stance softened, the way his eye dimmed with calm, not aggression. He had found peace not in solitude, but in purpose. One evening, under the twin moons of Varethus, Rhett sat beside a small campfire outside the dome. Kale approached, his armor replaced with a simple cloak, his form no longer looming, but comfortable. Rhett passed him a cup of warm brew. Kale took it with his clawed hand and sat. They stared at the stars for a while. Rhett broke the silence. You ever think you'd get here? Kale shook his head. I thought I would die in the wreckage. Alone. Forgotten. But you didn't. Because you stopped. You saw me. Rhett smiled. You weren't the monster they said you were. You were just, broken. Kale looked over. We all were. Rhett nodded. Yeah. But we can fix what's broken. That's what I do. What I was always good at. A pause. I never had a home, Kale said softly. I was created for war. For loyalty. For silence. But now. He looked toward the dome, where Rix and the others trained. Now, I have something to protect. Weeks passed. Word spread quietly across the outer systems. Not of war, but of sanctuary. A place where the hunted could rest, where the misunderstood could find purpose. Other species began to arrive. A blind sniper once used by the syndicates. An exiled aquatic queen who spoke in song. A child who had seen too much death and trusted no one. Kale welcomed each one. Rhett built new shelters, grew gardens with Varnation seed pods, and even managed to restore an old communications relay to broadcast encrypted messages of peace. The dome became more than a hideout. It became a home. Then, one day, a message arrived. Encrypted. Old code. Varnation. Sava brought it to Kale and read in the meditation chamber. It's from the Queen's daughter, she said quietly. Rhett blinked. Ilaris had a daughter. Sava nodded. She was hidden during the war. Raised in silence. But now, she leads a resistance. And she needs help. Kale listened to the message. A soft voice, resolute. My mother trusted you, Kale. I need you now. The old council is rising again. They want to finish what they started. If you still carry the fire, come. Help me light the galaxy. Kale looked to Rhett. Rhett smiled. You going to go? Kale nodded. Not alone. They left Varithus in the same stealth ship that had carried them into battle once before. But this time, they carried more than weapons. They carried hope. Rix came with them, as did 2 others from the original 5. They had chosen their paths. Not by code, not by programming, but by belief. In the stars ahead, war stirred. But so did change. And in the silence between the stars, a new kind of guardian howled. A soul remembered. Back on Varithus, the sanctuary continued. New lives arrived. Old wounds began to heal. And every evening, as twin moons rose, someone would sit on the high ridge and listen. For the sound. For the howl. For the memory of a mechanic who saw beyond broken metal, and a beast who refused to be what they made him. For the beginning of something better.